Hey folks, today I wanted to talk about building a box out of sticks, or more specifically, out of scrap wood. Chances are, if you've been a woodworker for a little while, you've accumulated boxes and boxes and boxes of this stuff. We never throw anything away because God knows we want to make something with it at some point. But usually when I've made boxes before, you've seen me use, say, a solid block of wood like this, and we make a top and a bottom out of that. But I think what I want to do this time is I'm going to take some different woods, like this maple, this cherry, because those are nice contrasting woods, and probably a little bit of this Gabon ebony, and see if we can't make a box out of this. And I'll show you how to assemble it, how to get it flat, and then how to go ahead and cut the box on it. So let's get started. Okay, to start, we're going to go ahead and get these all cut to length. I'm going to go for about a 12-inch board on this. So I'm going to cut these up into 12-inch lengths, starting with the cherry. I'm then going to take the ebony and I'm going to make some thin slices out of it. And as a contrasting stripe, I'm also going to make some thin slices of the maple as well. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to arrange our wood in a nice pattern. And what I'm going to go for in this case, I think, is an alternating setup to where, let's see, that there. Yeah. Okay, to do something like this. I think that'll give us a nice pleasing line on the box. Now, one thing you'll notice here is my pieces of ebony are a little short, and I really do want a 3x5, so I'm going to be, using this half for the bottom, this half for the top. So if I've got some short pieces like this, what I can do is slide them over to where they're in the middle, right? And then go ahead and when I glue this up, just be aware that I'm not going to cut in this center area right here, so I can avoid that area. And I'll still have a nice solid line for the rest of this. So I'm going to go ahead and glue these up, and then we'll tell you how to get it flat again, because right now it's going to be a little wavy. Okay. So once you got things to where you want to kind of dry fit them together and just kind of make sure that you don't have any gaps. If you notice, I got a small gap right here I'm probably going to want to take care of. So I need to flatten this one piece, this edge, a little bit more. So I'll take it over and run a hand plane across it, and then we'll give it another shot. Okay, so now that I've got this where I want it, I'm going to go ahead and take these apart and go ahead and glue it. You'll notice that I've got a small mark right here so that I know where my half is for my ebony. This will be an area that I won't cut on the CNC machine. My box lid will be here, my box bottom will be here. So that way I won't come across that empty space right in there. So from there on, it's just a matter of slathering some glue on, clamping this thing up, and we should be good to go. Okay, make sure everything is nice and aligned, because this is the last time before you let that glue set. So you need to make sure everything is aligned correctly. Alright, that looks good, so let's go ahead and put some clamps on it. Okay, so here's our glued up board, and I'm going to go ahead and cut these little pieces off here and probably make something new out of those. But you'll notice I've got some high points. I've also got some glue squeeze out and a couple other things, and I really want this to be flat so that both of our box top and our box bottom will come together nicely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a pocket pass across this whole thing. and I'm going to use a router bit because it's the widest bit that I've got. Normally I would not use this simply because it's got this collar on it, and if I was going completely down, if that collar hits something, it's going to stop, and it will definitely make your stepper motors very unhappy if you do it. But for this particular action, I'm probably only going to be taking about 1 millimeter off at a time, so all I'm really concerned with is the bottom of this bit. So we're going to use it to flatten this, and like I said, I'm just going to create a large pocket pass, go down 1 millimeter at a time, reset my 0, go down another millimeter, and just do it very slowly and carefully on this. So I'll show you the setup and we'll take it from there. Okay, so for our flattening pass, things are pretty simple here. Our stock is 12 by 4.5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase this just a little bit because I want kind of an overhang on this. When I do the flattening, I don't want to run out of space. So I'm going to make it 12.5 by 5. And the thickness is correct, so we don't need to change that. Let's go ahead and hit OK. Reset our view. Okay, so now I need to create a square, or a rectangle rather, that is the same size as my stock. My push it up here to 12.5 and 5. Okay, and then I'm just going to center that here. Now for me it's also easier. I'm going to come back here to my job setup, and I'm going to do this from the center because I've got it centered on my machine, and that way it's going to use that for my 0 point. But all I really need with this is I've got the rectangle covering the full area. Now for the tool path, all I have to do is a contour. I'm going to choose my big bit. I've entered this into the library before because I've used it for flattening things. We're going to go a little bit faster than that because we don't need to go that slow. 40. We're going to be taking off very, very little material here, so I'm fine ramping this up fairly high. I'm going to actually take that to 50. But again, we're probably only going to be taking off like 1 millimeter of material each time. So 1 millimeter is about 0.04 inches, and we're going to pocket, and looks like we get good coverage there, and I'm just going to call this flatten. Okay, and what we'll do each time is it will pocket this area, and if we still need to go down further, we'll re-zero our Z height and do another pass of this. And it should go fairly quickly. You can probably even increase the speed further than what I have, but that's the basics for this. So this will create our flattening pass, and we should be good to go and just save our G-code. Okay, so we've got our board lined up, and you want to pick the highest spot. So I'm going to grab one of these little ridges right here, and that's what I want to 0 to. So at least for our first path, let's go ahead and drop this down. All right, 4. All right. There, that seems to have it. Set 0. Done. Bring it back up. Okay, so now we should be ready to go. Our position is going to be here on the center, and it's built to go a little bit farther beyond the edges and a little bit farther beyond these edges, so it should catch the whole thing. I'm going to go ahead and put the dust collection on because this is going to be a bit of a pain. Okay, so that's our first pass done. We've still got a few little high spots here and some glue squeeze out in here. So I'm going to go ahead and run one more pass on this. I'm also going to nudge it a little bit that way and a little bit that way to make sure I get all the way to the edges here. But again, you don't want to do this really fast. You don't want to take more than like 1 millimeter off at a time. Just, you know, take your time and get it right. And we'll do one more pass, and then we're going to flip it, and we're going to do the other side. Okay, now we've done our second pass on the other side. And you can see we have just a nice flat board here. So this will be great for cutting our box. You might want to do a little bit of sanding to get some of the little ridges off from the step over. But other than that, this should be perfectly easy if you don't have something like a planer set up. So just use the router and flatten things out like that. But let's go ahead and get things measured and cut our box. One of the things I wanted to point out to you is because of the way this is designed, we've got pairs of cuts, right? So that this stripe should be centered in our board. That means if I center that box lid this way and I center the bottom this way, I should get a nice continuous design when I'm done. So that's one thing I need to keep careful of when I'm doing my design, is to make sure that I'm centered in this plane of the wood. So here's our box design, and I'm going to go over this briefly. If you need some more information, I suggest you take a look at the 3-part box series that I've got on this channel. But the basics of it are this: the cutout around the edge. This is a bottom. This is the top. These two pieces here will form a lip that should fit inside of this, right? That'll be where the two boxes go together. And then there'll be a pocket here and pocket here going down to give us our stuff to store things in. These little rectangles here are slots for magnets that I put in the box. And let's take a look at simulation so maybe you can see this a little better. If you look at toolpath, I've got my magnets, right? I've got my pockets, and I've got kind of an upper pocket here. And this actually makes more sense when you see the simulation. So let's take a quick look at that. So the cutout, then you'll notice you've got this tiny little lip here. This little lip is going to be what mates it to this piece over here. And again, these are just our little magnet holes. I'm going to slot some 1/4-inch magnets down in those. That'll help keep this together. The lip is going to be really short. It's about a little less than 1/8 of an inch. It's really just there for alignment purposes, more or less. The magnets will hold things on, but this will keep the lid from sliding off. So that's essentially what our box is going to look like. That seems to have everything together. All right, and you'll notice that I've split this into the 1/4-inch operations that I need to do, the things that I'm going to do with a 1/4-inch bit, and then the 1/8-inch ones. Now you'll also notice something else, that the magnets are split into 2 passes, and the reason is because the magnets here, the ones on my bottom, are going to be a little bit deeper than the ones on the top. And if we look at the simulation, I can show you why. So when we cut this lip out, we're doing a pocket pass around all of this, which means there's going to be about 1/8 of an inch difference between this height and this height. So when I cut my magnet pieces over here, it's going to have to go down further. Since those are going in first, I'm cutting my 1/8-inch stuff first. They'll go a little bit deeper, about 1/8 of an inch deeper than the ones over here. So that's why those are cut in 2 passes. But by grouping these in this way, I can go ahead and turn one set off, save my G-code for all my 1/8-inch stuff, then turn the 1/8 inch off, turn the 1/4 back on, save the G-code for the 1/4-inch stuff. And that way I've got my 2 separate files I need to make the passes on this box. So let's go ahead and do some carving. Okay, I have things set up and ready to go. I'm going to leave my dust collection off right now while I do this 1/8 cut, because it's just for my magnets. And I want to make sure that when it comes down, it's centered in between here, because that'll tell me whether or not the rest of my design is going to be centered the way I want. So I'm going to leave the dust collection off for right now and just do the 1/8 inch, and that should tell me whether or not I'm centered with enough time to go ahead and save it if there's something wrong. looks like I got things pretty well centered up on this, and hopefully that will do just fine. Okay, we're set up now for our 1/4 inch, and we definitely want some dust collection for this one. So we're going to go ahead and do our last pass on this. Make sure everything's down nice and firm, and away we go. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and take this over to the bandsaw and cut these guys out and see how everything fits together. Okay, I need to do a little bit of sanding to get everything to fit correctly together, but on the whole it looks like he's lined up pretty well, and I just need to sand the lip down a little bit to get everything fitting flush, but I think that's going to look pretty good. And put some finish on it and see what it turns out like. Alright, a little bit of cleanup. Looks like I did a good match on those. So that's our box. And right now I don't have the magnets or finish on it, but everything looks good. I'm probably going to sand this down a little bit more. I don't need it to fit this tight when I've got the magnets in it. So I'll do a little bit of finish sanding on it, and then it should be ready to put some finish on it, and we should be good to go. Okay, here's our box with a little bit of finish on it. Looks very, very nice. That cherry pops out so well once the finish hits it. So now that we've got that, we want to go ahead and put our magnets in. And again, if you've seen me use these before, these are just little 1/4 inch magnets, and they should slot right down in the holes that we made. A lot of times they fit well enough to where you don't need to use glue, but I will go ahead and use a little bit just this time. They seem like they were maybe a little bit loose. When you do these, make sure that your polarities are right, otherwise your box is not going to close. So easiest way to do that is to get them seated one on top of the other like this, and that makes sure that when you put them together, boy, these things stick. Right, so get them started, bring your box over, and use that to line them up, and that makes sure that your magnets are going to line up and attract. So just go ahead and glue them down like this, a little bit of cyanoacrylate, super glue, and you should be good to go, and we'll have our box done. Finished box. Nice tight lid, good alignment, and I think that's a nice pretty one.